The email arrived at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. Subject: Urgent Ownership Dispute Coastal Parcel 847-3392-01. From Jennifer Walsh, Senior Counsel, Meridian Development Group. Ms. Holloway, our title insurance company has flagged a critical discrepancy regarding the beachfront property at 1840 Ocean View Drive. County records show continuous ownership in your name since 2005. The deed transfer we received from Robert and Linda Holloway lists them as owners and grantors. We've halted construction. We need to speak with you immediately. I stared at my phone. Ocean View Drive. The lot I'd purchased 20 years ago when I was 26. The 1-acre beachfront parcel I'd bought with my signing bonus from my first engineering job. The one my parents had always called ours. I called the number in the email signature. Jennifer Walsh answered on the first ring. Ms. Holloway, thank you for calling back so quickly. We have a significant problem. Your parents sold us your property for $5 million. We've already broken ground on a luxury resort development. But you're the legal owner. You've been the legal owner for 2 decades. My hands went cold. They sold it. When? Closing was supposed to be last Friday. We paid your parents a deposit of $500,000 3 months ago. The deed transfer was filed with the county 2 weeks ago. We started site preparation last Monday. Foundation excavation began yesterday. I never signed anything. We know. That's why I'm calling. Can you come to our offices today? The Meridian Development Group occupied the top 3 floors of a glass tower downtown. Jennifer Walsh met me in a conference room that overlooked the ocean. The same ocean that bordered my property. The property I could see from here if I looked south. Where bulldozers were currently moving earth. Jennifer was 40-something, silver hair cut sharp, carrying a leather portfolio that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. She laid out documents like a dealer spreading cards. This is the deed your parents filed. He pointed to a signature. My name. Sarah Holloway. Except the handwriting was nothing like mine. The S curved wrong. The H had no crossbar. This is your original purchase deed from 2005. My real signature. Young, careful, slightly shaky with excitement. 26-year-old me buying her first major asset. Not even close, I said quietly. Jennifer nodded. Our title insurance company, Premier Title and Trust, runs verification on all properties over $2 million. It's standard protocol. They found your continuous ownership. Tax payments in your name. No gaps. No transfers. No joint ownership ever recorded. She pulled out another document. Your parents provided a quitclaim deed dated 2008. They claimed you'd transferred the property to them as a family asset that year. But there's no record of it in county files. The document number they provided doesn't exist. Because I never transferred it. I bought that lot myself. With my money. I've paid property taxes for 20 years. $40,000 annually, Jennifer confirmed. We pulled the records. Every payment from your account. Your name. Your bank. Your signature on file with the county assessor. She leaned back and I saw something in her expression. Not just lawyer mode. Something personal. Ms. Holloway, I need to be direct. Your parents committed fraud. Against you. Against us. Against the county recording system. This isn't a civil property dispute. This is forgery, fraud, and theft. The district attorney will get involved. The FBI might get involved because the dollar amounts trigger federal wire fraud thresholds. What about your company? I asked. You broke ground. You have equipment on my land right now. Her jaw tightened. We have a $500,000 deposit we can't recover from your parents because they've already spent it. We have 2 weeks of construction we'll have to undo. We have a title insurance policy that will cover our losses, but our premiums will increase. And we have a development timeline that's now destroyed. You're going to sue them. We're going to destroy them, Jennifer said, and her voice carried 20 years of corporate law experience. But first we need to understand what you want. Because you're the actual owner. This is your property. We have no legal right to be on it. I looked out at the ocean. At the cranes visible in the distance. At the land I'd bought when I was young and hopeful and stupid enough to think my family would be happy for me. The ghost ledger. What was taken without invoice. Entry 1, the purchase itself. 2005. I told them I'd bought beachfront property. Dad said, "We bought beachfront property, you mean?" I said, "No, I bought it." He said, "Family asset, Sarah. Don't be selfish." Cost: the right to own something alone. Never recovered. Entry 2, 20 years of property tax bills. $40,000 per year. $800,000 total. Every year Mom asked why I was hoarding family land instead of developing it. Cost: recognition of my financial sacrifice. Account balance: 0. Entry 3, the offers I refused. Developers approached me 6 times over 2 decades. Offers ranging from $2 million to $4 million. Each time my parents pressured me to sell and split it fairly with the family. Cost: autonomy over my own decisions. Permanently deducted. Entry 4, Thanksgiving 2019. Dad announced to 30 relatives that our beachfront property was worth $3 million. I corrected him. He laughed. Sarah bought it, but it's family land. Everyone nodded. Cost: reality itself. Overdrawn. Entry 5, last Christmas. Mom pulled me aside. "Your father and I are getting older. We should develop that land. Put our names on the deed to simplify things when we're gone." I said no. She called me ungrateful. Cost: the fantasy that love was unconditional. Foreclosed. Entry 6, this moment. Learning they forged documents, sold my land, pocketed $500,000, and planned to collect $4.5 million more on Friday. Cost: the last molecule of trust. Atomized. Total damage: incalculable. Unpayable. Permanent. Jennifer was still watching me. "What do you want to do?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. "I want them prosecuted. Fully. Completely. Every charge possible." She nodded once. "Then let me tell you what happens next." The investigation took 8 weeks. Jennifer called me every Monday with updates, her voice progressively harder. Week 1. We filed a fraud complaint with the district attorney. They're taking it seriously. The dollar amounts guarantee attention. Your parents retained an attorney, Mark Stevenson. Former prosecutor. Expensive. They're scared. Week 2. The county recorder's office found 4 other instances where your parents filed documents claiming interest in properties they don't own. 2 belong to your cousins. 1 belongs to your brother. They've been systematically filing false claims for years. Week 3. Your parents gave a statement to investigators. They claim you verbally promised them the property multiple times. They say you're going back on family agreements. Their attorney is trying to paint this as a misunderstanding. The county's handwriting analyst destroyed that narrative in 45 minutes. Week 4. The DA is charging them with forgery, fraud, grand theft, and filing false documents. That's 8 felony counts total. Your brother and cousins are also pressing charges for the false deeds filed against their properties. This is now a pattern case. Week 5. Your mother called our office. Tried to reach me directly. Said if we worked together, this could all be resolved. Her attorney called her immediately after and told her to never do that again. It's witness tampering. I've documented it. Week 6. They've spent the $500,000. Gone. Cruise around the world. First-class airline tickets for extended family. A new RV. The DA's asset seizure team found $12,000 in their checking account. That's it. Week 7. They're negotiating a plea deal. Their attorney knows they'll lose at trial. The evidence is overwhelming. 3 handwriting experts. County records. Tax payments. 20 years of documentation. Week 8. They're pleading guilty to reduced charges. 4 felony counts each. Restitution to Meridian Development. Restitution to you for legal fees. Prison time, 18 to 36 months. Prosecutors pushing for the high end. The sentencing hearing was on a Friday morning. Superior Court, Judge Andrew Martinez presiding. I sat in the front row. My parents sat at the defense table, both in dark suits that looked new. Judge Martinez was 62, Hispanic, with a reputation for being thorough and unmerciful with white-collar crime. He'd reviewed every document, every tax record, every forged signature. "Mr. and Mrs. Holloway," he began, reading glasses perched on his nose. "I've presided over property fraud cases for 23 years. This one is remarkable for its brazenness and its cruelty. He held up the forged deed. You forged your daughter's signature to sell property she'd owned for 2 decades. Property she purchased at 26 with her own earnings. Property she maintained with $40,000 in annual tax payments for 20 years. That's $800,000 she paid while you paid nothing. Mom was crying. Silent tears. Dad stared straight ahead. You sold it for $5 million. You took a $500,000 deposit and spent it in 3 months on luxury travel. When caught, your first instinct was witness tampering, calling the developer's attorney to work things out. Judge Martinez looked at me. Your daughter has provided a victim impact statement. I'm going to read part of it into the record. He adjusted his glasses. My parents didn't just steal my property. They stole the story I told myself about family. For 20 years, every time they called it our land, I corrected them. Every time they pressured me to sell and split profits, I refused. Every time they filed a false deed claim, they practiced for this moment. They were always planning to take it. I was just too naive to see the pattern. Judge Martinez set down the paper. I'm sentencing each of you to 36 months in state prison. Full restitution to Meridian Development Group. $500,000 plus their construction losses of $217,000. Restitution to your daughter for her legal fees. $48,000. And restitution to your son and cousins whose property records you falsified. $75,000 combined. He paused. You will have no contact with your daughter for 10 years following your release. If she wishes to contact you after that period, that's her choice. Until then, she's protected by this court's order. Mom turned around, looked at me, mouthed, I'm sorry. I looked away. 3 years later. The beachfront lot is still mine. Still undeveloped. Still 1 acre of protected coastline that I visit every few months. I've kept it exactly as it was. Native grasses, dune vegetation, shorebirds nesting in spring. Meridian Development settled with me. They got their insurance payout. We parted professionally. Jennifer Walsh sent me a holiday card last year with a note. Property rights matter. Thank you for standing up. My parents were released 8 months ago. Good behavior. Minimum security. They paid nothing in restitution. Filed bankruptcy inside prison. The court judgments are uncollectible. They've sent 3 letters through their attorney asking to talk. I've returned all 3 unopened. Judge Martinez's order holds until 2034. I might reconsider then. I might not. My brother calls sometimes. He forgave them. That's his choice. I don't judge it. But I remember the ghost ledger. The 20 years of our land while I paid every tax bill. The pressure to sell and share profits from property I bought alone. The forged signature on documents that tried to erase my ownership. They transferred my deed to steal $5 million. Instead, they transferred themselves out of my life. The property is mine. The signature is mine. The choice is mine. And I've chosen to keep the land exactly as nature intended. Wild, protected, and completely untouchable. Just like me. The memory of that day still burned fresh in my mind. The mahogany-paneled office. The contemptuous look in my father's eyes. The way he didn't even bother to stand up from his leather chair as he destroyed my life's work. You're fired, Alexandra, he had said, his voice cold as winter steel. You'll never be good enough to run Morgan Pharmaceuticals. 6 months later, I stood before my full-length mirror, adjusting the lapel of my Tom Ford suit. Tonight was the annual Pharmaceutical Industry Gala, the biggest event of the year. And I had a surprise for Daddy Dearest. My phone buzzed with a text from my assistant. Everything's ready, Ms. Blake. The press release goes live at 9 p.m. sharp. I smiled, remembering how this all began. After that day in my father's office, I'd done something he never expected. I'd called Jerome Wilson, CEO of Wilson Biotech, Morgan Pharmaceuticals' biggest competitor. Your research on the new cancer drug, I told him. I know why it's failing trials. He'd laughed at first. But 2 weeks later, when I showed him exactly what his research team had missed, he wasn't laughing anymore. He was offering me a job. What my father never understood was that I hadn't spent 15 years in his company just following orders. I'd been learning, watching, analyzing. I knew every strength, every weakness, every secret that Morgan Pharmaceuticals tried to hide. The car pulled up to the Grand Meridian Hotel. Camera flashes exploded as soon as I stepped out. The reporters weren't here for me, not yet. They were capturing the usual parade of industry giants. Miss Blake. A young valet rushed forward. Mr. Wilson asked me to escort you directly to the main hall. Inside, the ballroom was a sea of expensive suits and designer dresses. I spotted my father immediately, holding court near the center of the room, my older brother Thomas at his side. They were probably bragging about their latest acquisition, a small research facility in Boston. If they only knew I'd let them have that facility because its patents were about to expire. Alexandra. A familiar voice made me turn. It was Sarah, my former assistant at Morgan Pharmaceuticals. I didn't expect to see you here. Things change, I smiled, noting how her eyes widened at my confident demeanor. She'd been there that day watching as security escorted me out of the building. Your father's been telling everyone you had a nervous breakdown, she whispered, that you couldn't handle the pressure. Has he now? I checked my watch. 8:55 p.m. Well, Sarah, in about 5 minutes he'll have a very different story to tell. I made my way through the crowd, accepting glasses of champagne from passing waiters but never drinking. I needed a clear head for what was coming. Jerome Wilson spotted me and nodded slightly. The old man had been a perfect partner in this venture, ready to step down and let new blood take over. He understood something my father never did. Adaptation is survival. 8:59 p.m. My father's booming laugh echoed across the room. Of course Morgan Pharmaceuticals will be leading the merger discussions. We've been the industry leader for 30 years. I pulled out my phone, watching the seconds tick by. In the corner of my eye, I saw reporters checking their phones, their expressions changing from bored to shocked. 9 p.m. The breaking news alert hit everyone's phones simultaneously. The headline read, Wilson Biotech announces new CEO, Alexander Blake to lead $12 billion company. The room fell silent. My father's champagne glass slipped from his fingers, crashing to the floor. Thomas grabbed his phone, frantically scrolling through the news. I stepped into the center of the room, my heels clicking against the marble floor. Every head turned, every eye fixed on me. Good evening, everyone, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the stunned silence. I believe some introductions are in order. The silence in the ballroom was electric. My father's face had drained of all color, while Thomas kept looking between his phone and me as if he couldn't quite process what he was seeing. Alexandra, my father finally managed, his voice hoarse. What is the meaning of this? Before I could answer, Jerome Wilson stepped forward, placing a paternal hand on my shoulder. Allow me to make this official, he announced to the room. As of today, I'm stepping down as CEO of Wilson Biotech. Alexandra Blake will be taking full control of operations, effective immediately. The room erupted in whispers. Phones were frantically recording every moment, every reaction. I could practically see the social media posts writing themselves. This is impossible, Thomas sputtered. She's been gone for 6 months. She can't possibly. Can't possibly what, brother? I cut in smoothly. Can't possibly understand the industry? Can't possibly lead a major corporation? I pulled out my tablet. Shall we discuss the R37 project? Thomas's face went white. The R37 project was Morgan Pharmaceuticals' secret weapon, a revolutionary arthritis drug they'd been developing. How do you know about? He started. About how the latest trials showed liver complications? I finished for him. Or about how you've been hiding those results from the FDA. My father stepped forward, his business mask firmly in place. Alexandra, whatever game you're playing. This is no game, Jerome interrupted. Your daughter has revolutionized our research department in just 6 months. The cancer drug we were struggling with, she solved it in 2 weeks. More whispers rippled through the crowd. That drug had been the talk of the industry, Wilson Biotech's potential breakthrough that had mysteriously stalled. But more importantly, I added, we've just acquired Nexus Pharmaceuticals. The room went completely still. Nexus was the 3rd largest pharmaceutical company in the country, and Morgan Pharmaceuticals had been trying to buy them for years. That's not possible, my father growled. We've been in negotiations with Nexus for months. Were you? I smiled, pulling up another document on my tablet. Strange, because they signed with us last week. Would you like to see the contract? Thomas grabbed father's arm. Dad, this means they now control 35% of the market, I finished. making Wilson Biotech the largest pharmaceutical company in the country. I paused, letting that sink in. Or should I say, making us your biggest competitor. The reporters who had been hovering at the edges of the room suddenly surged forward, questions flying. Ms. Blake, how did you engineer this takeover? Mr. Wilson, why choose Alexandra Blake as your successor? What does this mean for Morgan Pharmaceuticals? I held up a hand, silencing the room. All excellent questions. But first, I believe my father was just telling everyone about leading merger discussions. I turned to face him directly. Would you like to revise that statement? His face had turned from pale to red, a vein pulsing in his temple. The same look he'd had when he fired me. You think this makes you powerful? He hissed, low enough that only those closest could hear. You think you can just walk in here and... Actually, Dad, I cut him off. I just did. And tomorrow morning when the markets open, everyone will see exactly how powerful I've become. The tension in the room was palpable as I reached into my clutch and pulled out a small USB drive. The same one I'd taken from my office the day I was fired. My father's eyes fixed on it, recognition dawning on his face. You remember this, don't you, Dad? I held it up. The drive you accused me of stealing company secrets with? Well, you were half right. I wasn't stealing secrets, I was collecting evidence. Jerome Wilson stepped forward again. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention. There's more to tonight's announcement. The reporter's cameras flashed frantically as he continued. Wilson Biotech isn't just acquiring Nexus Pharmaceuticals. We're also launching a new division focused on ethical pharmaceutical development and pricing. My father's facade cracked. You wouldn't dare. The Blake Initiative, I announced clearly, watching my father and brother exchange panicked looks. Named after my mother, who died because she couldn't afford the cancer medication that Morgan Pharmaceuticals marked up 3,000%. The room went deadly quiet. Even the reporters stopped taking notes, sensing the weight of the moment. That's right, I continued, my voice steady despite the emotion threatening to break through. The same medication that cost $3 to produce but was sold for $9,000 per dose. The medication that could have saved her, if her own husband's company hadn't prioritized profit over people. Thomas stepped forward. Alex, you can't just... Can't just what? Tell the truth. I turned to the gathered crowd. The Blake Initiative will ensure that life-saving medications are accessible to everyone who needs them. We're starting with cancer treatments, then expanding to other critical medications. The reporters exploded with questions again, but I kept my eyes fixed on my father. His carefully constructed world was crumbling and he knew it. You'll destroy the industry, he growled. No, Dad. I'm going to fix it. I nodded to Jerome, who pressed a button on his phone. The large screens around the ballroom came to life, displaying internal Morgan Pharmaceuticals documents, pricing strategies, hidden trial results, buried safety reports. Everything on these screens has already been sent to the FDA and ICE, I announced, along with detailed documentation of every illegal markup, every hidden trial failure, every suppressed safety concern for the past decade. My father lunged forward, but my security, stepped between us. You ungrateful little. Careful, Dad, I cut him off. The cameras are rolling and your shareholders are watching. As if on cue, his phone began ringing. Mine too. And Thomas's. The news was spreading and the market was already reacting in after-hours trading. Miss Blake, a reporter called out. What do you say to those who claim this is just revenge? I smiled, straightening my jacket. This isn't about revenge. It's about responsibility. About doing what's right. Something I learned not from my father but from my mother. I turned back to my father, who looked suddenly old and defeated. You were right about one thing, Dad. I wasn't good enough to run Morgan Pharmaceuticals. I was better. The room erupted in chaos as more phones started ringing. Morgan Pharmaceuticals stock was plummeting. Wilson Biotech's was soaring. And somewhere I knew my mother was smiling. Now, if you'll excuse me, I addressed the room. I have a company to run. And lives to save. As I walked toward the exit, flanked by my executive team, I heard Jerome addressing the press. The Blake Initiative will launch next month. We expect it to revolutionize the industry. I paused at the door, looking back one last time. My father stood alone in the center of the room, his empire crumbling around him. Thomas was already on the phone, probably with their lawyers. But I wasn't worried. I had something they never did, a purpose beyond profit. My phone buzzed with a message from my assistant. Your mother's foundation is ready to launch alongside the initiative. I smiled, stepping into the cool night air. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's becoming everything they said you couldn't be and then using that power to help others. As my car pulled up, I heard one last question from a reporter. Ms. Blake, what's your message to young women in the industry? I turned, knowing my answer would make headlines tomorrow. Never let anyone tell you you're not good enough. And when they try to stop you, don't get even, get better. The car door closed behind me, shutting out the chaos. Tomorrow the real work would begin. But tonight I had finally proven what I'd known all along. Sometimes being banned from the family business is the best thing that can happen to you. Because it forces you to build something better.